Hey guys, it's Jackson here from Titanic Games, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create an item spawner class in Unreal Engine 4. Now, the way we're going to have this set up is so that it can spawn, items kind of like, weapons that you might use in your game, or food things, or, I don't know, plants that you might harvest, things along those lines. But the principles here should apply to, spawning pretty much anything. So you'll just have to alter it to make it work for what you need. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started then. First thing, I'm using the first person example template, but this should work for pretty much any project. You might just have to change up the way that we handle our interaction here pretty soon. Okay, so first thing we're going to do in the content browser is we're going to right click, create a new folder, and we are going to name this item spawner. Okay, go ahead and open this up. Now we'll right click and go to blueprint class here. And now instead of creating any of these top ones here, we're going to click this all classes drop down. Okay, and we're going to search for a target point. Alright, and then we'll find that and select it. Now I like to use target points when I'm creating kind of these item spawners because they already come with a sprite image that is a target point. So it's just kind of a helpful way to start off with something that already has kind of a location that you can easily see, I guess. So anyways, we'll go ahead and call this BP underscore item spawner. And there we go. So next what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create our item class. Okay, so we'll right click again, go to blueprint class, but this time we'll create an actor. Now we'll call this BP underscore base item. All right, now this will be kind of your base class, whatever your class might be, that you base all of your other items off of. Now the reason for that is because the way we'll set this up is so that it can spawn anything that is a base item or descends from a base item. So that would include any weapons or food or potions, harvestable things, crafting components, whatever, right? We would assume that all of those would inherit from base item. So like creating a child blueprint. Okay, so that's what that is. So let's open it up, and we're going to add just a simple component here. We'll add a static mesh just so we can give it something visual. Okay, compile and save, and that's all we'll do for now. Okay, because I need to show something later that we'll make a change to. Okay, so save everything. Now, how about we go ahead and create all of our child classes quick. So I'm going to right click, create a new folder. We'll call this items. Okay, and we'll go ahead and create some of our our base classes here. So, or our child classes. So we'll create a child blueprint class. Call this BP underscore maybe base weapon. Okay, this will be a weapon. Create another one here called BP underscore base crafting component. Okay, now these are just names. We're not actually going to create them. Make another one, BP base, I don't know, potion maybe. And how about we do one more? BP base, I don't know, food. There we go. Okay, so we've got some base things. Let's save them all really quick. Then we'll take these new child blueprint classes that we created and we'll move them into our items. So move them there. Okay. Next we'll open each one up and we'll just give it a static mesh. Okay, so we'll click static mesh in the details panel. We'll go and change this. So this one, how about we make it a cube? We'll choose shape cube. Now I am using the starter content, so I have these, these shape pieces here, but you might not have them if you're not using starter content. So just use whatever you want, to just kind of show the differences. So we'll do base food now. Maybe we'll make this one a sphere, something like that. Let's open up potion. Maybe we can make this one a capsule, narrow capsule maybe. Okay. And then this last one, base weapon, let's make it, how about a cone? Okay, so there we go. So we've got our different, I guess we don't need to dock that, but we've got our different items now that are all inheriting from that base item class. So next let's go ahead and start setting up some of the logic for our item spawner. So we'll open this up, and the first thing you'll notice is, you see this little target point here, and that's kind of what I was talking about, right? It already inherits this sprite. And it inherits a arrow component which tells you which direction it's pointing, but it's really small and it scales with the screen, so like it's right there if you can see it. Kind of just tells you what direction it's facing, but we're not going to really use that. So anyways, one thing that I like to do is I like to take our sprite component and over here, lock the scale rotate or the scale, and then change it to like 1, just to make it a little bigger, so that you can see it from farther away, basically. All right. So now let's go to the event graph really quick, and we're going to delete these bottom two, but we'll keep event begin play because we'll use it later. Now next, let's create 2 variables. This first one we'll call it items to spawn. All right, and we're going to make this of type BP base item. So we'll find base item, and rather than doing a reference, we're going to do a class, because references they get updated and deleted at runtime. So if you lose a reference to these items to spawn, then you won't ever be able to spawn them again because they'll have been wiped from memory. So choose class. All right, compile and save, and we'll go ahead and make that editable. Okay, and next we'll make it an array. Okay, so now we can add multiple elements to it. So let's go ahead and add 4, because we're going to have our our 4 child classes. But one thing I want to point out is when you click this drop down, you'll see we have our base crafting, base food, base potion, base weapon, but we also have base item. And base item is purely used for extending to create all your other items. Okay, so we don't want to be able to spawn this base item class. So what we're going to do to prevent that is we're going to make it an abstract class. So we're going to click on our base item here, and if you don't have it open, just open it up. Okay, and we're going to click on class settings here. All right, so over here under class options, there's a drop down, and you can see that it has just a couple options here, which are kind of a little more advanced, I guess. So if you understand some programming principles, you can apply those here, and that's kind of what we're doing. We're going to apply a programming principle called abstraction, which just makes this class, not something that you can add to the world, basically. So we'll go ahead and click that, compile and save. And now just to show you what happens, right? If we try to drag this into the level, it won't let us. And that's because it's abstract and can't be used in the world. But if we take like our base weapon and drag it in, you see that you can. So that's the idea here. Okay, so let's go back to our item spawner, and now under this, this drop down, if we click it, you see that base item's no longer there. So that's perfect. So we'll go ahead and select each one that we can spawn. Right, and you might want to set up different item spawners that will only spawn specific items. Right, you could certainly do that, but this is of course just an example just to show you how to get started with it. Okay, so next we'll go ahead and add one more variable that we will call current item. Okay, and we'll change this to BP base item, but this time it will be a reference because this will be the item that we spawn at runtime. So we'll uncheck the array there. And there we go. Okay, so there's 2 ways that you can kind of approach this. So I'll kind of briefly explain one of the ways, but then we'll go more in depth with the way that I think works better. All right, so the first way is you could use what's called a timer. So you could say set timer by event or by function, and then every so often, like maybe 60 seconds, right, and looping, you could call some function that tries or checks if the item has been spawned. And if it hasn't, then, or checks if the item is available or not, right? And if it's not, meaning someone has picked it up or whatever, then spawn a new one. Okay, the only problem with that is that if players figure out, your kind of timetable and know when the items are going to spawn, they can wait until, that 59th second or whatever, and then, they can pick up the item and then immediately get the new one when it spawns. So I personally don't like that in my own games, so that's why we're going to use a different method, which revolves around the actual interactions, and it just uses a simple delay node instead. So anyways, let's go ahead and do that then. We're going to create a new function here, and we're going to call this attempt to spawn. Okay, now the reason we're doing an attempt to spawn rather than just spawning it immediately is because we want to verify that this current item isn't already spawned. Okay, so we'll take current item here, we'll get it, we'll say is valid. Okay, and we're going to use the question mark 1, plug this in, and there we go. Okay, now off of is valid, that just basically means that the item is already there. So we'll just do a quick print string, for debugging purposes, to say item already spawned. Okay. So off of is not valid though. We want to spawn our item. So we'll go ahead and create another function that we'll call spawn item. And before we get too far, we'll go ahead and just add that back into this attempt to spawn function. Okay, oops. There we go. Okay, so inside of spawn item, the end result of what we want to do is we want to spawn an actor from class. Okay, now we need to specify three things kind of here. The class, the spawn transform, and the collision that we want to do. So we can do the collision first. Basically, we just want to try to adjust the location if it's colliding with something. So for example, if it's colliding with your character, right, because you could be standing on it, it'll try to adjust the location, but it will always spawn. Okay, and depending on your collision settings on your items itself, you could have it overlap with your character or force your character all out of the way, you know, stuff like that. Okay, next for the class, what we'll do is, since we have this array of items to spawn, we can drag it out, we can get it, and now we can type get, and we can get a specific index from our array here to spawn. Okay, so the indices correspond to these numbers here, so 0 would spawn this one, 1, 2, 3 would spawn their corresponding ones. Okay, and we'll plug this in. Now, we're going to set this up to be random. But you can of course devise some algorithm to, you know, favor certain ones or not. So we'll drag off and we're going to type random integer in range. Okay, and for this range we're going to go from 0, which is our first index, all the way to the end of our array, so our last index. So we'll take items to spawn again, say get. And now, unfortunately, there's no just get last index function, which I think there should be, but there isn't. So we'll just kind of have to fake it here, which is, to do that, we'll type length. Okay, length, there we go. And what that'll do is it'll get the, you know, the length of the array. And then, you know, to get the last index, we'll say integer minus integer, and we'll just subtract 1, plug that into max. And there we go. Okay, so now it's obviously complaining here when I compiled because there's no spawn transform, so we need to specify that next. So what we'll do is we'll drag off of spawn transform, we'll say make transform. Okay, and all we're going to do is we're going to get this actor's location and rotation. So we'll say get actor location. Oops, not that one. It always chooses that one first, which is a little annoying, but get actor location. Okay, plug that into location. And then get actor rotation. I really can't spell today. This is fun. Okay, plug that in, and there we go. You could do the scale as well, but you know, we'll just leave it at its uniform scale, or its default scale, basically. Okay. So we have our spawning logic set up. All we need to do now is set our current item equal to this return value. Okay, so we'll drag this guy out, say set, hook it up. Oops. And there we go. We have our spawning item class, or spawning item function. Okay. Now all we need to do here is off of event begin play, call the attempt to spawn. So it should spawn it immediately. Compile and save. And now we can go ahead and test if this is working. So we'll come back here to the level. We'll take our item spawner, drag it out. So there it is right in front of our character. Now if we press play, you'll see that it spawned a random item. So if we press play again, you see it's the capsule, press play again, it's back to the cube, and so on. Alright, so we see that it's working. Next, what we need to do is set up our interaction so that we can, you know, interact with it and actually pick up our items. And, okay, so how we're going to do that is I'm going to right click, create a new folder just called interfaces. Okay, we'll open this up, and we're going to use a blueprint interface to communicate. So we'll go to blueprints here under create advanced asset, and we'll choose blueprint interface. We'll just call BPI underscore item spawner, whatever. Yeah, that'll be fine. Okay, we'll open it up, and we're going to add a new function here that we'll just call interact. Oops, interact, or how about interaction? Again, I can't spell. That's great. Oh my lord, this is so fun. Interaction, finally. Okay, then we'll add one more, and we'll simply call this respawn. All right, and we're not going to have any inputs or outputs on them. They're just going to be, you know, basic void functions, okay, or events. right? So next what we'll do is we'll go ahead and add our interaction to our character. So we'll click on our character here, go to edit, right? And we'll just find some empty space for right now, okay? And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and right click, and we're going to scroll down here to input, go to keyboard events, and we're going to find the E key, because I often find that the E key is a common key used for doing any kind of interaction stuff. So what we'll do for this interaction is we're going to use a line trace. So we'll say line trace by channel. Okay. Now we need to specify a start and end location. So for this, I'm going to use our character's camera as the start location. So we'll say get world location. Plug this in. There we go. Next, we want to take our camera's forward vector. So we'll say get forward vector, because this will, this projects, is the forward direction that our camera is facing, basically. So we'll multiply it by a float, and this will be the length that we, search for an interaction. So we'll say 500, and then we'll just add it back. So vector plus vector. I'm going to hold Control to drag these, plug this in. There we go. So we'll say vector plus vector and use that for the end. Okay, so it starts at our camera's location and then projects forward this amount of units into the world. All right, so for the traces channel, let's choose camera, because camera blocks everything. Visibility often gets ignored by many meshes or objects. And then we'll change the draw debug type to for duration, just so that we can see it, see where our interaction is. Now from the return value here, we're going to do a branch, okay, because we only want to fire off our interaction logic if we hit something. Okay, then if we hit something, we want to break our out hit here, so break the hit result, and we want to take our hit actor, and we're simply going to call the the interaction message on him. So we'll go here, interaction message. That's all we're going to do. Now the great thing about interfaces is that you don't actually have to have a reference to a specific actor in order to call the function on it. It's basically just if the actor implements this function, it will call the function, but if it doesn't, then your code will still execute and there won't be any errors. So it's kind of a nice thing. Okay, so that's our basic interaction system. If we want to just try it out really quick, see that it's working. If I hit E, you can see these line traces being drawn. Okay, so there we go. So now we have this event being fired, and where it's going to fire off is it's going to hit our item. So we'll go into our base item, get rid of all of this, okay, and we'll go ahead and first we need to go to class settings and go to implemented interfaces and say add, and then we'll add that new interface we created. Now the reason we didn't do it on the one before on our character is because our character isn't actually implementing any of these functions. Okay, only the classes that implement interface functions need to have the interface added. Okay, so we'll right click and type event this time, say event interaction, and so on interaction we need to send another message to our item spawner. Okay, so now the question is, how do we tell it which item spawner to go to? Okay, so there's a couple ways we can do this. I'll show you two ways really quick. So the first way is we can create a variable here that we will call my item spawner. Okay, and we'll go ahead and change this to the BP underscore item spawner. Okay, and we'll make it a reference. Alright, and we'll make it editable, and then we're going to go check off this fancy little variable here called expose on spawn. And what this will do, okay, if we compile and save and go back to our item spawner, go into the spawn item, what you'll see is on this spawn actor class that this my item spawner has now been added. Okay, and that was a direct result of setting this expose on spawn. So if I untick it, we go back, you'll see that it's gone. So that's kind of a really helpful way that you can set things in the construction of your items. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll right click and we'll say self, get a reference to our self, because this self is an item spawner. Okay, and we can pass it through. All right, now that's one way that we can get a reference to our item spawner. The other way, which is kind of a built-in way of doing what we just did, is we can use a node called get owner. Okay, so in our base item, if we right click and say get owner, okay, this will get whatever actor owns this actor. And this is kind of a I believe a way that works better with multiplayer stuff, so that might be a route you want to take. Okay, so if we go back to our spawn item and we click this drop down, there's this owner node, which essentially is going to do the same thing. Okay, so if we plug self into owner, it will tell this actor that's being created that its owner is this base item. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do that option instead of the my item spawner, but I just wanted to show you two ways that you can do it. Okay, so we'll go ahead and delete this now. Okay, so see, everything's back to normal, and we're going to use this get owner. All right, so now with this get owner, we'll drag out and we'll type respawn. Okay, so we'll tell it to implement, to send to our base or our item spawner here this event. Okay, and then you could execute any kind of logic you want to for, I don't know, like storing it in your player's inventory or whatever. But we're going to say just destroy actor for now. All right, so we'll compile and save. Now what we'll do is we'll go back to our item spawner, go into the event graph, and we'll next we need to implement that interface. So we'll go to class settings, implemented interface, add the item spawner. Okay. Now if we right click and type event respawn, we can implement this interface. So what we'll do is we'll do a delay. Okay, and we'll tell it to wait, however long we want to wait until respawning. Okay, so maybe 5 seconds just for testing purposes. You'll probably want to do something a lot longer, like 60 seconds or 2 minutes or however long. So it might be helpful to promote that to a variable so you can change it on like a case-by-case basis. Okay, so we'll say delay before respawn. There we go. Okay, make that editable, and there we go. So now you can edit that on, based on whatever item spawner you have. Okay, and then after that, we'll simply say attempt to spawn. Okay, now in order to make that work, like definitely work, we might want to say set current item. Okay, and just set it to null. All right, now the garbage collecting system inside of Unreal, which well, I mean, I was going to say more on the garbage collection, but really that's probably a talk for another day. So just know that this just makes sure that there's no reference to it anymore. Okay. So then, anyways, after the set delay, it will attempt to spawn, right? And then if it succeeds, it'll spawn the item. Okay. So everything should be ready now. So let's go ahead and try it out. If we go out and drag our item spawner into the level, let's go ahead and do 3 of them maybe, just so that we can really see it in action. If we press play, okay, we have our 3 items that have been spawned. Okay, if we hit E, right, you can see I'm sending out interactions. So let's interact with this guy, right? He's disappeared. After 5 seconds, a new one gets spawned. Okay, again, gone, and boom, he's back. So now, just to show it again, I can pick up all these items, and then they will all respawn. Alright, so there you have it. There's how to set up a an item spawner. One thing that you might want to change, I guess, is kind of storing what item was spawned and then continually respawning that one. Okay, so that might be something you want to do. So I guess I could show you a way to do that, but if you guys want to see that, just let me know and I'll make another video on it. But anyways, that's how you do the base item spawner. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this helpful. If you liked the video, like or subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.